The wind towers of Tarsis sang all night, thin silver needles rising from the glass desert like a forest of frozen rain. Their hollow ribs hummed as the storm shifted, a patient sound that calmed most people and kept travelers on the safe roads. Eli Mercer never found it soothing. To him, the song was a warning. The towers sang because this world, Chiron, never stopped moving. Sand slid over sand. Heat rose from cold stone and bent the air. Dunes marched like slow animals. If you fell asleep in the wrong place, the desert swallowed you before dawn. Eli worked the night watch in the relay house under the South Ridge. The room smelled like hot dust and old wiring. Half the equipment was older than him. Half the rest was scavenged from crash sites and stripped of any code-like brain. The people of Tarsis used analog by law. It was the quiet law, nothing that spoke with itself, nothing that reached out to the sky. He understood why, he even agreed most nights. But still he kept one converter on a hand-cranked alternator. He had built it from a radio spark unit, a ceramic bowl, and the core of a toy music box he traded for a bottle of cough syrup. It was ugly. It worked. Eli turned the crank with his left hand and tapped the needle gauge with his right thumb. The needle wavered between 3 and 4. Acceptable. He took a breath and listened. The wind towers sang steady. The desert yawned beyond the ridge. Tarsis slept with shutters closed and lanterns dim. Footsteps clicked on the stone stair. Eli looked up as Sei ducked under the lintel. Sei was Ilyar, tall, silver-skinned, her throat set with a round blue stone that flickered when she spoke. Most Ilyar wrapped their faces in silk veils to keep the sand out. Sei wore no veil. She said she wanted the wind to see her mood. Tonight her crest quills lay flat. Bad mood. "You should be sleeping," Eli said. "And you should be obeying the quiet," Sei answered, eyes going to the crank. "But here we are." Eli smiled and set the handle free. The alternator clicked down to stillness. "It is only a rescue net, old frequencies. If a trader gets caught outside a tower's voice, I can pull them in." Sei's stone glowed once, a doubtful blue. "You pull in more than traders when you tug at the dark. The elders feel you. They wake when you crank. They say your human hands are too curious. Human hands fix their water pumps, too. That is why they tolerate you." She moved closer and leaned on the table beside him. Her skin felt like cool metal near the heat of the lamp. "The council meets at second dawn. High Warden Thee is back from the North Basin. He will ask again why Tarsis keeps a human in the relay house when the law says no calling." Eli shrugged. "You can tell him I did not call, I listened." Sei's throat stone flared, and her quills rose a little, the Ilyar sign for worry. Listening can be louder than shouting if the wrong ear is near. He started to say something clever, but the needle jumped. Not a sway. A jump clean and quick like a finger rapping glass. He froze. Sei felt it too, her stone dimmed in a reflex of fear. The needle jumped again, 3 short ticks. A breath of nothing, 3 more, not wind, not the hum of the towers. Tarsis was a choir, even its storms kept a key. This pattern cut across the ambient music like a cough in a hymn. Eli's mouth went dry. He put his ear to the old cone speaker. He heard the desert breathing, the wind towers, steel ribs, the slow moan of the ridge. Under that, a pulse low, almost too low, 3 beats and a rest, 3 and a rest, on, patient and cold. Sei whispered, "Turn it off." "Wait," he said. "We can map it. If it's a broken beacon, we—" "Turn it off." He glanced at her. The edges of her eyes had gone dark, like the bruised color some Ilyar wore in mourning. Eli turned the crank anyway. The alternator thrummed. The speaker woke. He adjusted the coil with a nail he had bent into a tuning fork. The pulses grew clear, 3-beat clusters, then a longer pause, then again. Sometimes the last beat was late by a hair. Sometimes the second was heavy. There was intent in that. Eli had lived long enough around languages he did not know to recognize when something carried meaning. Tone had shape. He scribbled on a scrap of paper. Short, 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 gap. Short, 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 gap. Sei stepped back to the door and touched the lintel with her fingertips. The Ilyar did that when they feared the wind might carry a name away. "Eli," she said, "this is a morning cadence, a hunt song from long before the quiet, before my great-mother's time. It is what the high choirs sang when a storm swallowed a caravan. The towers would answer and the sand would settle. It is a prayer. It is a promise to the lost." "How do the towers answer?" "They do not anymore," her stone dimmed to gray. "We stopped answering when the sky began to echo us." The pulses kept coming. Eli closed his eyes and counted them. 3, pause, 3, pause, a longer rest, 3, 3. He drew a line under his marks, then set another line at regular intervals. The pulses started to fall in columns. The columns grew staggered. He turned the scrap sideways. A picture began to show, not a picture, a spectrum of time. "What are you?" Sei started. "Listening slower," he said, simple. "If you cannot make sense of a thing, you change the frame." He added a second sheet to extend the grid. A third. The pulse pattern never repeated in the same place twice, but across the pages it curved. The curve drifted, then settled, then drifted again in a new way. It looked like a breath. It looked like a heartbeat seen through heat haze. "Life," he murmured. Sei shook her head. "Hunt's song." "Or both," Eli said. He pulled the music box core close and used its chime wheel as a crude clock. The pulses liked to arrive near the chime at angles of 7 teeth and 11. That was nothing like coincidence. That was intent, or a system writing a simple clock. He fed the pulse into a tin cylinder packed with sand and graphite. The old trick turned sound into a rippled groove. His grandmother had shown him on Earth in a kitchen that smelled like clove tea and rain. "The world keeps a record of you whether you want it to or not," she had said. "If you refuse to keep your own, the world will tell your story wrong." He had kept his own ever since. The groove answered now with a faint cry when he ran the stylus through it. 3 low scratches and a skip, 3 and a skip. He pressed a second stylus to the cylinder at half pivot. The scratches doubled, an echo against itself. New beats appeared between the old ones, weak but real, like footprints beside footprints. Eli leaned closer. The new beats were not evenly spaced. They formed words if you were cruel and wished to read danger into noise. Sei stepped forward despite herself. Her stone flickered. "What do you hear?" Eli swallowed. Not sure yet. He dug a pencil out of the pocket of his canvas vest and wrote what his hand ached to write. "Do not call." "That is not a prayer," Sei said. No, Eli's face had gone cold. "It is a warning." The relay house door opened and a curl of cool night washed in with the smell of iron. Old Rig, a trader whose face leathered like a boot, limped in and held up a wet scarf. "You too hear the desert cough?" he said cheerfully. "Saw light on the ridge and figured you'd be breaking the quiet again, Eli boy. Thought I'd watch." Sei flashed him a look that could have cracked glass. "The elders will not like you calling." Rig snorted. "The elders have loved me since I started paying double tithe on salt." He leaned over the table and cocked his head like a bird. The pulses kept up their calm doom. His smile faded. "That isn't Tower song." "No," Eli said. Rig's missing eyebrow rose. "Then maybe stop holding a welcome dance." Eli ignored him and added a fourth page. The curve in his columns now filled half the paper like a river. The new beats in between had begun to shape into pairs and long coasts. Pauses came at regular intervals big enough to drive a wagon through. He marked them with dots. The dots fell into a line. He felt his scalp tingle. He placed the 3 sheets side by side and laid the fourth above the first to make a square. Sei moved them a hair to align the columns. The room seemed to hold its breath. The dots formed a crude shape now. It was crooked, lopsided, a child's sketch, and unmistakable once you saw it. It was the outline of Karan's southern desert, the shape of the ridge above Tarsi's. It even carried the jag of the crashed basalt spire 2 days east. Rig looked from the shape to the open door like he expected to see a giant hand come down and press. "No," he said softly. "No." Sei's stone flickered between blue and white. She looked like a lantern behind thin cloth. "The sky is drawing us," she whispered. Eli swallowed hard. He set the second stylus again and ran through the groove a careful quarter turn off the first pass. The weak in-between beats hissed to life with more strength, as if they liked to talk when their older brothers spoke nearby. He transcribed fresh marks in the spaces. Letters began to suggest themselves, not Ilyar sigils, human strokes. He wanted to be wrong. He wanted his hand to shake and the marks to wander into nonsense. They did not. They gathered where they wanted to go and refused to move when he pushed them. 3 words stared up from the dirty papers. "We see you." Rig backed toward the door like it had grown teeth. "I'll fetch the warden," he muttered. "The choir will want to." "No," Eli said too fast. Sei turned on him. "What do you mean, no? The quiet is not mine to hold, not yours. It belongs to all. If the sky breaks it, the choir must answer." "They will smash this," Eli said, pointing to his crude cylinder, his bent nail, his papers. "They will smash this and burn the room and say it kept us safe. They will mandate more silence and post guards so hard that nobody asks the next question." He touched the papers. His hand shook now, not from fear of the elders, from what else he had read in the weak marks, those shy letters hiding under the loud ones. Two more words, small, buried, but there. Do not. Sei stared. Do not what? Do not answer, Eli said. The wind towers shifted their pitch. Sei and Rig looked at one another. Even in his stubborn human bones, Eli felt that change like a hand on his chest. The desert had leaned in. The ridge had taken a breath. The world had moved a small fraction of a small hair closer. Eli forced his fear into the steady work of his hands. He set the cylinder again. He listened again, slower, then faster, then with the stylus dragged so soft it barely kissed the groove. The between beats grew into ghost words and then into lines that crisscrossed. He started to see another shape under the map. A second drawing behind the first drawing. Long arcs near the ridge. A circle at the town. A small cross at the relay house. They are not only seeing us, he said. They are marking us. Rig swore softly. Well, that's friendly. Sei put a hand on Eli's forearm. The touch steadied him and changed nothing. What do you do with a thing like this? She asked quietly. If you tell the elders, they punish you and we hide. If you do not tell them, they punish you when they find out and we still hide. Or, Eli said, we answer. Sei's breath caught. You just said we must not. We must not answer the sky, he said. We can answer each other. He wiped his hand on his vest and pointed to the weak pairs that hid among the strong three beats. It is not a single voice. There is more than one sender. Some lines carry the long pulls and the heavy nodes. The others hide inside their shadow. They are riding the same carrier. I think the strong voice is the hunter. The weak one is the prey. The weak one was the one that wrote do not answer. How do you know? Because the weak beats do not complete the map. They try to erase parts. They paint over the circle at the town. They blur the cross at this room. His chest hurt. Something on the far side of the sky is using the loud call to draw us, and something else is scratching you are in danger in the gaps. Rig exhaled like a punctured water skin. If this is a hunt, then we're the meat cart. Eli moved quick. He tore his paper into 4 rough squares and shoved 2 into Sei's hands. Take these to Trader Ket's on the east wall. She knows how to hide a book in a barrel of salt. If the elders burn this room, I want a copy underground by dawn. Sei did not grab the papers. She held his gaze. If the elders burn this room, they burn you, Eli. I've been burned before, he said. Her stone pulsed a color he had learned in his first year on Karen, anger wearing worry as a hood. She took the papers. The wind towers shifted again. Their choir fell to a low chord that the old ones called the murring note. It meant something heavy had entered the desert. A caravan, a storm spine, a city on legs. Eli's stomach went cold. He stepped to the door and looked out. Moonlight slicked the dunes like oil. The towers glowed faintly where wind had polished their aeroglass. The ridge threw a long black shadow toward Tarsi's, and beyond all that beauty moved a bar of darkness that did not belong. It crawled instead of flowed. It was not wind. It was not sand. It was a moving absence, straight as a ruler crossing the flats toward the town. Rig swore again, and then lost his voice. Sei's crest quills rose along her skull until they framed her like a crown of ice. Eli looked at the paper in his hand, then at the black bar on the desert, then at the circle drawn on his crude map where the town would be. The circle met the bar if you set the page against the horizon. Inside, he said, his voice surprised him. It sounded calm to his own ears. Bar the door, push the table. Rig moved, Sei moved. Eli went back to the cylinder like a man who knows the ship is flooding and still tightens one more bolt. He set both styluses. He dragged the groove with his fingers so slow the chimes would have laughed if they had breath. He listened for the weak voice, the one hiding under the hunt. He heard it between the threes, short beats like a child's steps, a pause that felt like someone holding a breath too long, a catch, and then a small word so small it broke his heart. Help. He leaned hard on the stylus as if pressure could make a plea louder. Where, he whispered, where are you? Sei's hand found his sleeve and squeezed. Eli. The pulses changed. The loud voice, the hunter, stopped drawing the ridge and began to trace a new line. This one arced across his square toward the top left, over and over, strong and smooth. Eli did not need to think to see it. He had drawn that arc 100 times for the elders' children when they asked where his people came from. It was the curve between Karen and a blue world he would never see again. Eli's pencil snapped between his fingers. He stared at the new line until the veins in his eyes burned. The hunter was not only marking Tarsi's, It had found Earth. Sei saw it in his face before she saw it on the paper. What is it? Home, he said. The wind towers shifted a third time, deeper, lower, a sound that made the stone of the relay house vibrate. Rig babbled a prayer. The bar of darkness on the desert split into 2 bars, then 4, as if the first had unrolled like a banner. They were too straight, too constant. No living storm held a perfect edge like that. A fist rapped the door from the far side. Not frantic, official, the sort of knock that did not ask. Open, called a cool voice. Sei's stone flickered white. High Warden Thee, she whispered. Rig took a step away from the door like it had grown a mouth full of glass. Eli did not move. He held the stylus like a spear and tried to breathe. The weak voice spoke again, sand grit soft. They are already here. The door bar slid out of its brackets before Rig could grab it. The door swung open alone. 3 figures in ash-gray robes stood in the frame, veils smooth, hands folded. The center one raised a palm. Cold wind swirled through the room and put out the lamp. In the dark, the wind towers of Tarsis stopped singing. The silence that followed was unnatural, not the kind that came when the wind died or when sand settled after a storm. This was thicker, heavier, the kind that pressed against skin and made the inside of your ears ache. Eli felt his own pulse in his teeth. The 3 robed figures did not step inside right away. They stood in the doorway like carved statues, their veils unmoving, their hands still folded. The High Warden's voice came again, low and cold, but perfectly clear despite the dead air. You have broken the quiet. Eli wanted to argue, to tell them he hadn't called, only listened. But the words stuck like dry bread in his throat. He glanced at Sei, but she wouldn't look at him. Her throat stone glowed a faint gray, the color of submission. I was only running rescue scans, Eli managed, his voice too thin to sound convincing. The warden stepped forward. The 2 attendants followed, silent as shadows. Their robes made no sound, not even a scrape against the stone floor. Eli thought that wrong. Everyone made sound. Even careful Ilyar feet clicked faintly on the rock. You heard something, Thee said, not a question. Eli's hands curled on the edge of the table. Yes. The warden's head tilted. Behind the veil, the face was unreadable. Show me. Sei shifted uneasily. High Warden. Show me, Thee repeated. Eli's eyes dropped to the table where the cylinder, stylus, and scattered papers still lay. His heart hammered. If Thee saw the crude translation, "We see you," the council would not simply scold him. They would erase him. I destroyed it, Eli lied. Noise only, static. The warden raised one hand. The 2 attendants moved past Eli like smoke. They swept the table clear with long fingers, lifting the papers before he could stop them. One held the scraps to the dim starlight leaking through the open door. Even in the weak glow, the lines and words were plain. Sei's throatstone flared bright blue. Eli, she hissed. Thee took the papers and studied them for a long moment. Then, very gently, he set them down again. Do you know why the quiet law exists, human? Eli swallowed. To keep us safe, to keep the sky silent. Wrong, the warden's voice was steady, like a teacher correcting a child. The quiet is not to keep us safe, it is to keep them blind. He gestured toward the desert. Outside, the bars of crawling shadow had grown longer, stretching toward Tarsis with impossible speed. Sei's quills rose. The towers already sing the murring note. The city knows something comes. Thee's head turned. The city knows nothing. The towers know, and they sing because the old enemy has found us again. The old enemy. Eli had heard that phrase before, whispered around fire pits, hidden in children's lullabies. A story used to frighten Ilyar hatchlings into obedience. But the way Thee said it now, flat and without ceremony, made Eli's skin crawl. What are they? Eli asked quietly. Thee's veil shifted, as if the mouth beneath had smiled. Erasure. The word hung in the air like frost. Before Eli could ask more, the ground trembled. Just a shiver at first, then a steady rhythm, like a giant heartbeat echoing through the stone. Dust fell from the ceiling. The needle gauge on Eli's jury-rigged machine ticked once, then spun wildly, clattering against its stops. Sei grabbed his arm. They're close. The warden did not move. His voice remained calm. You have done what none of us dared. You listened. Now they know exactly where to find us. Eli's chest tightened. Then we have to warn the city. No, Thea raised his hand again, sharp as a blade. We cannot warn them. To speak is to call is to die. Another tremor rolled through the relay house, harder this time. The cylinder rattled across the table and fell to the floor with a dull clang. Rig cursed under his breath. Then what the hell do we do? Wait here until they eat us. The warden's attendants finally moved. They drew from their robes long staffs made of pale metal, tipped with glowing crystals. Eli had never seen weapons like them, but the air vibrated faintly when they were raised. Thea turned back to Eli. You will come with us. Eli froze. Why? Because you heard them, Thea said simply, and because you may yet be useful. Sei stepped between them. He is under my protection. He is not Ilyar. The quiet law cannot judge him. For the first time, the warden's voice sharpened. The quiet law judges all who live under our towers. Do not mistake tolerance for mercy, Sei. The two attendants stepped closer to Eli. Their staffs hummed softly, the air around them rippling like heat haze. Another quake shook the house, harder than before. Outside, the wind towers groaned, their song breaking into harsh, discordant shrieks. And then Eli heard it, not through his machines, not through the cylinder or the crude stylus, but with his bare ears. A pulse, 3 beats, a pause, 3 beats, a pause. The sound came from the desert itself. Rig's face went white. It's in the ground. Sei's stone flickered in panic. No, it's under the ground. The floor trembled again. Dust poured from the ceiling in a choking cloud. The attendants raised their staffs higher, the crystals now burning bright white. The warden's voice cut through the chaos like steel. We leave now. Eli's instinct screamed at him to run, but his eyes fell on the scrap of paper still clutched in his hand, the one with the faint, desperate words scratched between the pulses. Help. Something out there, someone, was trying to warn them. And if Thea was right, if these shadows were not just hunters but erasers, then Earth, the place he still called home even if it was half a galaxy away, was next. He shoved the paper into his vest and grabbed Sei's hand. Her stone burned blue-hot as she met his eyes. We can't let them silence this, Eli whispered. The ground split open outside, with a sound like the world tearing in half. From the crack, something began to climb. The crack split wider, stone shrieking as it tore. Sand hissed down the slope and vanished into the dark below. The wind towers around the ridge moaned in unison, their notes breaking, bending, as if even they feared to hold their voice steady. Eli had seen storms tear buildings apart. He had seen fire eat whole blocks back on Earth before he left, but nothing had ever made him feel this small. Something moved in the fissure, not fast, not frantic, slow, deliberate, like it already knew the world above belonged to it. At first he thought it was a shadow, then it blinked. A limb, long and pale, reached out of the crack. Not skin, not scale, something stretched too thin like lightless fabric over bone. The claw at the end scraped the ridge stone and cut a groove deep enough for sparks. Another limb followed, then another. The thing climbed, joint by joint, each movement too smooth for flesh and too wrong for machine. Sei's quills flattened tight against her head. Her throat stone flared white in a pulse of fear. She whispered in her own tongue, the words cracked and trembling. Rig backed away, muttering curses, his boots slipping on loose dust. That's no storm spine, that's no. The warden silenced him with a single look. Stand firm, Thea ordered. The attendants planted their staffs. The crystals at their tips blazed, throwing harsh light across the crack. For the first time, Eli saw the creature's face. It had no eyes, just a stretched mask of pale flesh with ridges where sockets should have been. Its mouth split too wide, pulling open in a silent scream. And when the light touched it, it smiled. Eli's stomach turned to ice. It wasn't a smile like a human's. It was an acknowledgement, as if it knew exactly who had been listening. The creature hauled the rest of itself from the fissure. Its body unfolded in jerks, too long, too thin, but never clumsy. Each limb bent at wrong angles, yet always found its mark. And behind it, others began to stir, pale shapes pushing against the dark like moths against glass. They're coming through, Sei breathed. The warden's attendants struck the ground with their staffs. A wave of white light blasted forward, striking the creature full in the chest. The impact shook the ridge, dust and sparks flew. The thing staggered back, then steadied, its smile never fading. Eli had no weapon, only the crowbar he used on the relay's stubborn panels. He tightened his grip on it anyway. That didn't kill it. No, Thea said calmly, but it told us what we needed. The attendant struck again. This time the blast hit the crack itself, collapsing the edge of the fissure in a thunder of falling stone. Some of the pale shapes below vanished under the collapse, but the first creature had already climbed clear. It stood at the edge of the ridge, head tilting from side to side in broken rhythm, as if studying them. The warden raised his hand. Hold. The creature stepped forward. Its limbs bent outward, then folded close, and suddenly it wasn't crawling anymore. It was walking. Stiff, upright, almost human, but only almost. Eli couldn't look away. He felt something in his head, a pressure behind his eyes, a beat that matched the pulse he'd heard on the old machine. 3 thuds, pause, 3 thuds, pause. The creature wasn't just here, it was speaking. Sei clutched his arm, her nails biting through fabric. Eli, it's in you. The words scratched inside his skull, not sound, not language, but intent. We see you. Eli gasped, staggering back. The crowbar fell from his hand. The warden's head snapped toward him. What did it say? Eli's voice shook. The same as before, they see us. Thea's veil hid his expression, but his tone was hard. Then they know who broke the quiet. The attendants moved again, staffs raised, but the creature was faster than anything its shape should have allowed. It blurred forward, limbs folding and snapping open, and slammed into one of them. The staff clattered across the floor. The attendant screamed, the sound cut short. The creature bent close and simply erased, not blood, not flesh, just nothing. One moment there was a body, the next, empty air where it had stood. Rig bolted for the back door, terror breaking through every ounce of old trader's bravado. No, no, not for me, not for me. Stay, Thea shouted, but Rig was already gone, boots pounding down the outer steps. The second attendant struck, blasting the creature with another wave of white fire. This time it reeled, its skin blistering, its head lolling too far to one side. But then the blast sputtered. The crystal at the staff's tip cracked with a sharp pop, dimming to a dull glow. The creature straightened, its smile widened. Eli lunged, grabbing the fallen crowbar. His hands shook, but he forced himself forward. Over here, he shouted, swinging with all his strength. The bar connected with a wet, snapping sound. The creature's head jerked back, but then it leaned forward again, unfazed, as if mocking the idea of harm. Its mouth opened. This time sound did come. A low, grinding rasp like metal dragged across stone. The relay machines screeched in response, every gauge spinning wildly. Eli felt the pulse in his bones now, drilling into him. And beneath it, faint, broken, but desperate, he felt another voice. The weak one, the prey. Do not fight, do not call, run. He staggered, clutching his head. The words weren't for everyone, they were for him. The creature lunged again, too fast. Eli had no chance to dodge, but before it reached him, Sei stepped between them, her stone blazing pure white. She slammed both hands against the creature's chest. The thing convulsed. A shockwave burst out, knocking Eli to the floor. For a heartbeat, the world went silent. When sound returned, the creature was gone, not dead, not destroyed, simply gone like a breath held too long and finally released. Eli dragged himself upright, ears ringing. Say, what did you? Her quills sagged, she trembled like glass under strain. I opened the stone, she whispered. It will not work again. The warden stepped forward, calm as ever, though his attendants were gone, one erased, one broken. Then we move now, he said, before more climb. Eli looked past him, out over the desert. The 4 bars of shadow had multiplied. There were 8 now, sliding closer, splitting and spreading like cracks in glass. And in the back of his skull, the weak voice still whispered, They are not the hunters, we are. Eli's blood ran cold. He didn't understand, not yet, but he knew the meaning would matter. He turned to Sei, still pale from what she had done. If that's true, then we're already part of the hunt. The desert boomed again, and the shadows split once more. The ridge shuddered under their feet as the shadows split and spread, crawling across the desert with a patience more terrifying than speed. Eli had never seen anything so deliberate, so inevitable. The warden did not flinch. He turned to the survivors, voice cutting through the chaos. We go to the deep vault. The quiet is broken. Only the sealed halls will hold us. Sei leaned against the table, her breath ragged, her throat stone dimming after the blast she had unleashed. Eli gripped her shoulder to steady her. She can't keep running. She will, Thea said flatly, or she dies with the rest. The words struck Eli like a slap. He wanted to shout, but the ground beneath them cracked again. From the widening fissure, more pale limbs began to reach. The choice vanished. They had to move. They fled down the back steps of the relay house, the warden's single remaining attendant taking point with staff glowing weakly. Sei stumbled, but Eli kept her upright. Behind them, the wind towers screamed as one. Their harmonic song collapsed into a single unbroken shriek that stabbed through bone and marrow. Riggs' tracks were fresh in the dust, running toward Tarsai's. But ahead, the warden turned away from the city, leading them east into the glass desert. "Vaults are the other way," Eli said, panting as they descended the slope. "No," Thee replied. "The vaults you know are for children. The true vault lies beneath the singing dunes. Only the choirs walk that road." Eli cursed under his breath. The singing dunes lay 2 days away, without storms, without shadows that erased men like chalk from stone. 2 days might as well be forever. But Thee marched without hesitation, his staff marking each step in white glow. By dawn, they had crossed into the outer flats, the sky painted red by a sun that always seemed too close. The desert glittered like broken mirrors, each shard reflecting a fragment of light. Sei moved silently beside Eli, her quills drooping, her stone faint. "You're burning out," Eli said softly. She gave a thin smile. Better to burn than to vanish. He had no answer. He just tightened his grip on the crowbar he still carried, the weight of it grounding him. They rested briefly under a jagged basalt spire. The warden stood apart, veil still, hands folded. He hadn't looked at them once since leaving the ridge. Eli finally broke the silence. "You knew they'd come." Thee turned his head, veil shifting. "We always knew. That is why the quiet exists." "Then why not tell people? Why hide it in stories and lullabies?" The warden's tone was ice. "Because panic is death. The moment you told the desert you were listening, the hunt began." Eli's hands tightened around the crowbar. "I didn't call them, I just—" "You listened," Thee cut in, "and that was enough." Sei stirred. He also heard the other voice. Thee finally turned to face them fully. "Other voice." Eli nodded. "In the gaps, a weaker signal. It told me not to answer. It begged for help. That wasn't the hunter. It was something else." The warden was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Describe it." Eli swallowed. "Broken, faint, like someone screaming underwater, but it wasn't random. It was trying to erase the hunter's marks, trying to protect us." For the first time, Thee's calm cracked. His voice dropped to a whisper. "The echoers." Sei's stone flared pale blue. "They're real." The warden gave a slow nod. Old records spoke of them. Fragments of the erased, voices caught between silence and memory, survivors that were never allowed to live. They speak through the hunter's own song. Warnings no one is meant to hear. Eli's skin prickled, and I heard them. "Yes," Thee said almost to himself. "A human ear, untrained in our choirs, might catch what we cannot." The revelation twisted Eli's gut. He thought of Earth, the blue world that had once been his home, now traced in the hunter's pulse. If the echoers had reached him here on this broken desert world, then maybe others were screaming across the stars. He wanted to believe it. He needed to believe it. They walked through the heat until the air itself shimmered. The shadows never chased them directly. Instead, they appeared and vanished along the horizon, always moving closer, always circling, like wolves herding prey toward a kill. As the sun dipped low, the wind carried a new sound across the flats. Not the steady hum of towers, not the groan of dunes. A rhythm, 3 pulses, a pause, louder than before, vibrating through their bones. Sei clutched her chest, her stone flickering wildly. "They're speaking again." Eli staggered as the pressure built in his skull. The hunter's voice crashed through him, cold and final. "We are near." But beneath it, fainter, desperate, nearly drowned, came the echoers. "Do not trust the robed ones." Eli stopped dead, his breath catching. He turned toward Thee, who strode ahead with his staff, unflinching, calm as ever. The words burned in his skull, sharp and undeniable. "The quiet is their lie. They serve the hunters." Eli froze, his chest tight. He glanced at Sei. Her quills trembled as if she felt the pressure too, but her stone showed only confusion. She hadn't heard it. The warden turned, veil catching the wind. "Why do you stop?" Eli forced the word out, heavy as stone. "Because I don't know if you're taking us to safety or straight into their jaws." The warden's silence was louder than any denial. And then from the horizon, the shadows began to move, not slowly, not patiently. This time they were running. The shadows broke into a sprint across the desert, black banners rolling low over the glass flats. Their speed was wrong, too fast for anything with mass, as if distance itself bent to their will. Eli's gut seized with raw terror. Every instinct told him to hide, to drop flat against the hot stone and pray they passed over. But the hunters weren't predators in the old sense. They didn't chase. They erased. "Move," Thea barked, his voice carrying no fear, only command. The warden's single attendant raised his cracked staff. The glow at its tip flared, casting a weak shield of white arcs over their small group. But Eli could see how thin it was, like candlelight in a storm. Sei stumbled as they ran. Eli looped her arm around his shoulder and half-carried her, teeth gritted against the weight. She was lighter than a human, her silver skin cool against him, but exhaustion dragged at every step she took. "You're not leaving her," Eli growled. "Thea didn't slow, then you will both die." Eli spat sand from his mouth. "Better than following you blind." The words came out harsher than he meant, but the echoer's warning still pounded in his skull. The quiet is their lie, they serve the hunters. Every time he looked at the warden's veiled face, the words flared hotter. They reached the edge of a dune field just as the first shadow hit the ridge they'd abandoned. From the distance, Eli saw the relay house shudder and fold like paper. The tower's chorus shattered into silence. Sei's stone dimmed to gray. "Tarsize," she whispered. Eli forced himself not to look back. If he did, he knew he'd stop running. The warden stopped at the foot of the first dune and struck his staff into the sand. The crystal pulsed once, twice. The dune in front of them shifted, grains humming like the strings of an instrument. Then it parted, a narrow passage opening down into darkness. "The vault," Thea said. "Go." Eli hesitated, chest heaving. Everything in him screamed that the hole was a trap, that stepping into it meant handing themselves over. Sei squeezed his arm. "We have no time." And she was right. The shadows had already begun to sweep toward them, spilling like liquid across the flats. Eli dragged her with him into the passage. The sand closed overhead, shutting out the red sky. Darkness swallowed them, broken only by the weak glow of the warden's staff. The tunnel wound downward, walls alive with faint vibrations. It felt less like carved stone and more like they were walking through the throat of some enormous beast. After what felt like hours but could only have been minutes, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern. Rows of crystal spires jutted from the floor, each taller than a man, each humming with soft resonance. Symbols were etched into their bases, spirals, crescents, flowing lines Eli didn't recognize. "The choir vault," Sei breathed. Her stone flickered pale green, all pushing through her fear. "I thought it was only myth." Eli's skin crawled. The resonance of the crystals pressed against his skull in rhythm with the hunter's pulses. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats, pause. "It was here too." "This isn't safety," he whispered. "It's a beacon." Thea ignored him. He moved to the largest spire and placed his hands on it. The whole chamber shuddered. The hum grew louder, vibrating the air. Eli staggered back. "You're calling them." "They are already here," Thea said. "We cannot hide, we must prepare." "No," Eli snapped, chest tight. "You're helping them, that's what the echoers meant." The warden's head turned slightly. "You heard them again." Eli froze. He hadn't spoken of that second message aloud. Thea's voice softened. "Tell me what they said." Every instinct screamed not to. The echoers had warned him, do not trust the robed ones. Sei looked between them, her stone flickering with unease. "What are you talking about?" Eli's voice was raw. "They said the quiet is a lie. They said the wardens serve the hunters." Sei recoiled as if struck. Her quills rose, sharp with panic. The warden lowered his veil just enough for his mouth to show. His lips curved in something not quite a smile. "Perhaps they are not wrong." Eli's breath caught. "What?" He spread his arms toward the spires. "The quiet is not silence. It is harmony. We give the hunters what they demand so that the rest of us may live. Sacrifice one voice to spare the choir." The chamber hummed louder, shaking dust from the ceiling. The crystals pulsed with every word the warden spoke. "You broke that harmony, human," Thea said. "Now you must pay the price." The remaining attendant stepped forward, staff raised. Eli's hand tightened on the crowbar. His heart pounded. Sei staggered between them, stone blazing white. No. Thea didn't even look at her. He has heard the echoes, that makes him dangerous, to us, to all. The crystal's hum reached a fever pitch, pressing into Eli's mind like hot knives. For a moment he thought he heard the hunters themselves, laughing through the resonance. And then through the noise, the echoes screamed inside his skull, raw and desperate. Break the vault, or earth will fall. Eli raised the crowbar. The vault shook with sound, not music, not harmony, control. The resonance of the spires dug claws into Eli's skull, forcing his pulse to match their rhythm. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats, pause. He tasted copper. His vision swam. If he let go, if he let himself sink into the rhythm, he knew what would happen. He would vanish like the attendant above the ridge, erased from the world as though he had never been born. The warden raised both hands against the tallest spire. His veil fluttered from the force of the vibrations. Do you feel it, human? This is why the quiet is kept, to feed them order, to keep them sated. The hunters do not want blood, they want obedience. Eli staggered, crowbar slick in his hands. That's not survival, that's slavery. It is survival, Thea said, voice resonating with the chamber. You have no idea what extinction sounds like. Sei's stone blazed white, her quills standing on end. Thea, this is not the law. The quiet was for protection, not worship. The warden's eyes flashed beneath the veil. You think the law was written for your comfort? It was written because we bargained, because long before your grandparents hatched, we chose silence instead of death. Eli's skull throbbed. He could feel the hunters pushing against him through the resonance, their smile stretching across the void. And beneath it, faint, drowning but unyielding, the echoes cried again. Break the vault, do not let him finish. The warden's attendant advanced, staff raised. The crystal at its tip pulsed, white light strobing. Eli stumbled back, nearly falling over a smaller spire. Sei moved first. With a scream, she threw herself at the attendant. Her smaller frame slammed into him, quills cutting his arm, sending the staff clattering across the stone. Eli lunged, catching it before it could roll away. The staff vibrated in his hands, alien weight, thrumming with resonance. For a heartbeat, he saw himself striking Sei with it instead of the warden's guard. The image wasn't his. It was pushed into him. He shook his head and swung hard, smashing the crystal staff against the nearest spire. The impact cracked the crystal in a blinding flash. The spire wailed, its tone breaking. Dust poured from the ceiling. The warden roared, voice shaking the chamber. Fool, you doom us all. No, Eli shouted, staggering toward the next spire. I'm freeing us. He raised the crowbar and slammed it into the crystalline surface. The spire screamed as if alive. The hum fractured, splintering into jagged notes. The echoers howled in triumph through his mind. Yes, break it, break them all. Sei stumbled to his side, blood on her arm, stone glowing weakly. Eli, if you shatter them all, the hunters will come. They're already here, he gasped. But if we cut the leash, maybe they bleed too. The warden's attendant rushed him, eyes wide with fury. Eli swung the broken staff, catching the guard across the chest. The hum rippled through the chamber as the man crumpled, body flickering, half there, half gone. A moment later he was dust. The cavern's resonance wavered. The spires screamed louder, cracks racing down their glowing sides. The warden staggered back, veil torn loose, revealing a face gaunt and lined, eyes black with fury and fear. You don't understand. The hunters are not conquerors. They are the cleaners. They purge those who rise too far. They will burn your earth as they burned ours. Eli froze, the words hit like ice in his chest. Cleaners, purge, burn, the warning he'd translated in the relay house. They will burn us all. Then why serve them? Eli demanded. Thea's voice cracked raw. Because you cannot fight the tide. You can only bow low enough that it passes over you. Maybe, Eli said, raising the crowbar high, but I'd rather drown standing. He brought it down with every ounce of strength he had. The largest spire split, shards exploding outward in a storm of glowing fragments. The vault's harmony collapsed into chaos. Sound tore itself apart. The hunter's pulse shattered into screams, high, distorted, furious. The cavern shook so violently that spires toppled like trees, crashing into each other, breaking in a domino of wailing crystal. The warden staggered into the falling shards, veil torn away, mouth open in a scream Eli couldn't hear. A collapsing spire fell across him, and then he was gone, crushed beneath stone and light. Eli dropped to his knees, ears bleeding, head pounding. Say knelt beside him, gripping his shoulder. The sound did not stop, it changed. Through the wreckage, through the chaos, the echoers spoke, louder than ever, their voices woven from 1,000 broken pulses. We hid, we ran, we screamed. You heard, you broke the chain. Eli forced his eyes open. Shattered spires littered the ground, glowing faintly. Through the cracks in the cavern roof, he saw the red sky boiling. Shadows writhed above the desert like smoke against fire. The hunters were coming, not slowly, not patiently, now. Sei helped him to his feet. Her stone flickered pale blue, the color of resolve. What have you done? Eli gripped the crowbar tight, his knuckles white. His voice was hoarse but steady. I gave Earth a chance. The cavern ceiling split. Sand and glass poured down. And through the new wound in the sky above, the first of the hunters descended. The ceiling tore wide. Light bled in, not the sun's red glare, but a sickly white glow cast by the descending hunters. Dozens of them, maybe more. Pale limbs bent wrong, masks without eyes, mouths stretched too wide in silent screams. They didn't drop like soldiers. They folded down through the air as if space itself opened for them. Eli's knees locked. His every instinct begged him to run, but there was nowhere left. The choir vault was collapsing, the desert above swarmed, and Earth, his Earth, was next. The echoers shrieked inside his skull, a chorus of broken voices. We hid, we fled, we screamed, you answer, you carry it now. Carry what? Eli gasped, blood dripping from his nose. The mark, the chain, they hear you because you are loud enough to break silence. They cannot erase what does not obey. Sei pulled him toward a half-broken spire. Her stone burned blue-white, too bright for her frail body. Eli, we have to go. Where? He choked. Her quills trembled. There is always one more road. The dunes have tunnels if we can. The hunters hit the cavern floor. The sound was not footsteps. It was erasure, like a section of reality gone with every impact. Stone darkened and vanished under their touch. The last spires toppled, singing their death notes into the ground. The warden's voice echoed faintly from beneath rubble, mad and broken. Obey them, bow, and they will pass. Eli's hand shook on the crowbar. He looked at Sei, at her worn face, at the fire in her eyes that refused to dim even as her body faltered. Then he looked at the hunters, rows of blank masks smiling without lips. He made his choice. No bowing, he whispered, no more quiet. He drove the crowbar into the cracked remains of the largest spire. The broken crystal split apart, and the cavern howled with a noise no ear was meant to hear. Not harmony, not rhythm, pure human chaos, grief, rage, defiance, all poured into the wound in sound. The echoers screamed with him, their fractured voices swelling into something alive. The hunters reeled. For the first time they faltered. Their forms bent and stuttered like bad reflections, as if the pulse inside them had lost its grip. Sei collapsed to her knees, her stone blazing so bright it seemed to burn through her chest. Eli, she cried, her voice raw, you'll tear yourself apart. He felt it too, his bones vibrated. His skin split in hairline cracks of blood. But the echoers filled him, their chorus no longer faint but fierce. You open the door, now scream it shut. He lifted his head toward the hunters. His throat tore as he shouted, not words, not language, but the raw sound of refusal. The spires caught it, fractured it, hurled it back in jagged echoes. The hunters screamed for the first time, a sound like metal collapsing, like the void itself recoiling. One by one, their pale bodies buckled, flickered, and imploded into nothing. The cavern roof split fully, daylight pouring in. The shadows above writhed, retreated, split apart like smoke blown by wind. The desert fell silent again. Eli dropped to the floor, every muscle trembling. His crowbar clanged against stone. His vision blurred, his body breaking under the strain. Sei crawled to his side, cradling his head, her stone finally dimming to a faint ember. You did it, she whispered. He coughed blood and gave her a crooked smile. No, we did it. The echoers whispered one last time, quiet now, almost gentle. Not hunters, cleaners. They will return. But you are noise they cannot silence. Earth is not blind anymore. Eli closed his eyes, the words burning into him. Noise, humanity's curse and its shield. Days later, under a broken sky, survivors gathered at the ruins of Tarsi's. The wind towers had fallen silent, their long song ended. But across the desert, faint signals whispered through makeshift machines, rebels, traitors, outcasts, all listening now. Sei stood beside Eli, her stone scarred, her voice weak but steady. Together they played back the recording Eli had carved into scrap metal with his bleeding hands. Not harmony, not obedience. Humanity's defiance mixed with alien voices that had refused to vanish. It was not a message for the hunters, it was for Earth. "Do not be silent," Eli said into the transmitter. His voice shook, but it carried. "Do not bow, they weren't supposed to hear us, but they did, and now the whole galaxy knows we are here." Static roared, then faintly, impossibly, an answering pulse came through the noise, not the hunters, not the echoers, something else. Different, listening. Sei's quills trembled as she met Eli's eyes. "What have you done?" He smiled, tired but unbroken. "I made sure we'll never be quiet again." Above them the stars flickered, shifting like curtains drawn across a stage. The galaxy had heard humanity's scream, and nothing would ever silence it.